social value out of it, we're going to do it even while it's in this state. It won't be in this state for very long though, because the concrete repairs are underway, and the whole building, haven't done it here, but you will see when we look in there afterwards, they've already done the first floor and the third floor. They're working on the floor called the mezzanine, 2 floors down from here at the moment. They're kind of making their way around the building. So what I want to do tonight is to give you a little bit of a feel of what the broad vision is for the building, how it fits with a wider ecosystem of other buildings and other spaces in the area. Tell you a little bit about how we got here, and we got here through the experience at Rock House next door, and to say a little bit about what it's like to be a tenant in Rock House. That gives you a feel for the kind of approach that we take. And then just talk you briefly through the plans that we have for the building. And then Beth is going to talk much more practically about practical information about tenancies in the building. So just very broadly, this is not a big project about a building, it's a project about a place. So it's a project about Hastings, and very specifically about this small part of Hastings. It's got many different names. It's the America Ground, Trinity Triangle, White Rock, the Central Zone. I think the council tried to name it at one point very imaginatively. So there's got lots of different names, but once you get to know it, you know how special it is. It's a really, really important part of town. It's been derelict as a part of town rather than just as a building for a long time, but slowly it's been coming back to life. So first of all, the print works was taken on by a family who have renovated it and made it really productive and lots of, as a mixed-use building, and they also live there. They put up with a lot of dereliction. I think we were next with Rock House, still very derelict in the area. But always this building, this enormous 4,000 square metres of derelict space, basically empty since 1985, although with 1 year, which some of you might remember, of really fantastic use in 2016, but not sustainable use, unfortunately. Still in the ownership of somebody, as all the owners have been, who was basically looking for planning permission in order to put it back on the market. Every single person who's ever owned this building has made money out of it. None of them have ever mended any of it. So none of them have ever repaired it, but they've all made money because every time you buy it, you get planning permission, you sell it on higher. The only person who ever lost money on this building was a mortgage fraudster who ended up in prison, and the money that he lost belonged to the bank, who then ended up holding this building, thinking it was worth £4.2 million, and in the end had to give up and send it to auction with a guide price of £150,000. They actually sold it for £320, but still that's a long way down from £4.2 million. So the big thing that's gone wrong for this building has actually been lots of different owners, lots of different planning permissions, none of them serious. So we are the opposite extreme from that. I never want to see this building sold again. There is no reason why it should ever go back on the market. The whole idea is to take it off the market and to create social and community and economic benefit out of it. And that it will change over the years, over the decades, but that it will always be held for that mission. Now it has to make money, which is partly why all you are here, but it also has to have life in it, which is the other reason you're all here. So that's what we're about, is making sure that it does make enough money to be able to sustain itself, but that any surplus gets reinvested. So we've reinvested the surplus from Rock House in here, and we've used Rock House, we've mortgaged Rock House in order to borrow the money to buy this. So it's all about that recycling of value, creating value and recycling it back into this little neighbourhood. And the reason for that is that Hastings has sort of two things going on at once. It has this dereliction problem still, and it has also a gentrification problem. And so we can go on to the next one. We have spent, so I've been involved in lots of different ways with lots of different people, doing kind of fairly systematic community engagement over the years, year upon year upon year, different projects but all in the same kind of area, starting with the pier, but moving to the alleyway out here and then into Rock House and then to here. And what we heard especially if you go on to the next one, we did in 2015, we held this series of quite small scale but open meetings asking these questions. We called them the Power Hour because of America grad, but asking these questions about, is gentrification happening? If it is it a problem? Some people would say it's a great thing. If it is a problem, can we do anything about it? And we felt yes, and maybe we could. And the maybe we could was bringing property into community ownership. We go on to the next one. We then, around that time, it became possible to buy Rock House, and that's why we were occupying the basement of Rock House on a meanwhile lease, just doing some community consultation, and we got a call from the agent saying, "Do you want to buy the whole building?" So, long story short, we did. And it's been this sort of transformation from empty space to really productive workspace, and from kind of a derelict frontage to a brand new frontage that's proud, that says something good's happening here. That's been a slow process. So when we got it, it was all 9 floors of it were empty. And then at each phase, we've been able to get a little bit more money to do a little bit more of it and open up more floors as we went. So you can imagine for these guys who moved in March 2015, and for these who were residential flats who moved in March 2016, there was still quite a lot of red space. And red space wasn't sitting there just empty, but ready to be used. It was derelict. So it needed an awful lot of work. And that meant that those guys who were in there and there, they put up with quite a lot. So they put up with core drilling through the concrete to put the soil pipes in. They put up with all kinds of builders and decorators around all the time. Luckily, those builders and decorators were all local people. People got used to each other. One of the decorators said to me at the end of it, "I've painted my soul into these walls." So it's not just the tenants who feel a strong connection with the building, it's also the people who help to renovate it. But there are really good things about that, because those people who were there at the beginning are still there. They're totally committed to it. They have not just loved the ethos, they've helped to shape the ethos that the building has. But, you need to be aware that when we do these kind of approaches where you take a bit at a time, for a tenant, there can be disruptive sides to that. It's not all easy, as John will tell you, who's one of the people who's been in Rock House all the way through. It's now, you can see a little red bit at the end there, but actually we need to put the new slide in because the bottom bit is now full too. So Rock House is now both complete, in the sense of completely renovated, and completely full. And that's what gives us the kind of faith, I suppose, that there is a market for what we're trying to create here. It's not a market, one of the best valuers in town, or one of the best known valuers in town, Dyer and Hobbes, Ollie Dyer said to me, "Jess, there is no market for offices in Hastings, and yet Rock House is full." So what he means is there's not a kind of traditional market, but there is a market or a demand for really interesting space where people are connected, where there's collaboration, where there's a kind of creative vibe to it, but there's also diversity. It's not just a kind of enclave of artists, it's a kind of well-connected group of people who need affordable space and are willing to be part of something bigger than their own, however many square metres of that space. So yeah, just quickly what's happened at Rock House. We now have 10 residential tenants in the building, 43 businesses, 78 jobs. It's full. We've got this homegrown Wi-Fi network, RockNet, which also services a number of other local buildings, which is the best, the fastest broadband in Hastings. And it's also future-proof. We can keep cranking it up. And so we'll use that here as well. So it will be very good Wi-Fi. So from the point of view of tenants in the building, the critically important thing to tackle gentrification is not just to try to decommodify buildings, take them off the market so they don't go around this endless cycle that this building's gone through, but it's also about capping the rents. It's about taking the setting of rent away from the local market. So the local market in a gentrifying town looks like that. that is not affordable. The only way that's sustained is if the people who were there then leave and new people come who can afford that. And again, and it has to keep going up, you have to keep replacing the people. In a gentrified town, that's not a problem, you just bring them down from Hackney. It's very easy to solve Hastings dereliction if we're willing to just hype it to Hackney and get all those creatives down here because they are paying more now than they would be paying here. But that is not an answer that works for Hastings. So the capping of rents is a philosophical point. It's about saying instead of letting that happen, what we do is that, inflation only. So whatever you start at, the rents, not whatever you start at, because in some circumstances we might negotiate a discount for a particular space because that's not done yet, it's not finished yet. But whatever the agreed starting rent is, that will be capped securely forever. And so the point of that is to sustain affordable both housing and workspace in Hastings in perpetuity. There's also this idea that this is about place, not just a building. So there's lots and lots of opportunities to engage more widely with the whole neighbourhood in however people want to do that. But that is something that we absolutely want to encourage, and we particularly want to encourage links between each of the buildings that are similar, or really different buildings, but they've got these similar values around capped rent, around collaboration and kind of self-management. But we also want to encourage more general connections with the neighbourhood as a whole. So we both for residential and commercial tenants, we have 4 selection criteria. So people need affordable space rather than having it as like a second workshop or something that is just a hobby on top that they could easily do elsewhere. So need, local connection, a sort of enthusiasm for the ethos behind it all. So you don't have to be really enthusiastic, it's not about being an extrovert about it, but it's about fundamentally agreeing with the idea that we can do things differently and that it's better to be more collaborative and more engaged. So an agreement to that ethos and the willingness to make some kind of contribution above and beyond any financial arrangement, to be willing to be present with it. So that might just literally be contributing your personality into it, but we hope you will also, as tenants, think about some other ways of contributing. People in Rock House do that in lots of different ways. Some of them are quite formal, like there's a kind of weekly rotating kitchen monitor role. Sometimes you get really nice biscuits, sometimes you don't, but the kitchen's clean. But there's also, once a year a group comes together to organise a Christmas party, so there's a sort of social side. But there's also the really boring thing. So somebody makes sure that the bins have gone out, and if the council don't come, or whoever it is, don't come and collect them, they'll phone up. So people take on different roles. This point about, so the heart of Hastings is the local community land trust. That means that it aims to hold property in trust for the community forever. We're both working with them, and they are now a 1/3 shareholder of the owner of these buildings, both Rock House and the Observer, which is called White Rock Neighbourhood Ventures. Rather long name, but that White Rock Neighbourhood Ventures is a partnership of 3 organisations: Heart of Hastings, my company Jericho Road, which is just me and Beth, and a company called Meanwhile Space, which is a community interest company that works across London and the South East. So a local, I'm local too, but a local community land trust, a local company, and a wider community interest company. And the idea is that over time, we've done that very deliberately, that partnership approach, because it's very hard to go straight to community ownership on a building as scary and big as this. So it's good to do that bit in partnership, but there's written into the shareholder agreement is the idea that eventually it all passes over into the Heart of Hastings Community Land Trust. So, long after I've got run over by a bus or whatever, the building and both buildings will be in long-term community ownership. Thank you. So these are just some quotes from people at Rock House. The picture is one of our monthly foyer hangouts, just a social space that people get to know each other in. quite sure what Mark's doing there. But yeah, so you can see we've got a couple of workspace tenants and a residential tenant there. Sorry. So that's fine. So to say something about this building then, 1924 it was built. It was a kind of extension to the printworks. When they ran out of space at the printworks, they were advised to just give it up and move out of town. But they loved this area, F.J. Parsons, and so they cut this building into the cliff. And they linked it up with a whole load of tunnels that were pre-existing tunnels that are in the 3 or 4 floors below us under here. So it's an amazing and fabulous building. It's basically a factory, but it's a factory that has a huge number of windows, large windows, 2.5 metre by 2.5 metre windows. So there's an awful lot of light that can be let in. A lot of them are boarded up still at the moment against pigeons, but it will get lighter and lighter over the years. And then in terms of over the years, so this is kind of what we're aiming at as an initial set of uses. It doesn't change vastly from this, but so the lower 3 floors, this floor here, the ground floor, this is the Cambridge Road floor. And this floor, which is much higher, 5 metres high, goes out onto the alley. So I hope most of you perhaps know that area. So there's 3 floors at the bottom of leisure uses. And we're starting up a charity that will help local businesses, local people to start leisure and learning businesses. So leisure businesses, but also with quite a strong informal education kind of side to them. This floor, the first floor, this room is planned to be a kind of co-working space, which we have one very similar in Rock House, which is very successful, kind of easy in, easy out, but your own desk for as long as you want it. And then out there will be a much bigger version of that with kind of studios rather than desks. And there are some offices at the front. And then eventually, we perhaps skip to the next one and then skip back. Eventually, we're aiming to have 2 floors of affordable capped rent homes. But if you go back again, initially, for at least 5 years, we want to make this whole space into artist maker space. And it might be that that works so brilliantly that it's even better than housing. But we are fairly committed and we absolutely know there is a need for affordable housing in the centre of town, or in Hastings in general. So that's quite a hard dilemma really, because we want both. The roof, the original building only went to this level, so that was the roof. But then in the 1950s, they ran out of space again. So they put a tin roof on it and put the typists up there. So it's freezing cold and fairly unpleasant. And Beth was telling me today that the men weren't allowed up there. So they were always making up excuses to go and see the typists up in the roof. It's really quite a horrid space. It won't be a horrible space because we're going to rip that roof off, which has already failed very badly, and go back to the original roof line and have that as a roof garden with a kind of bar that leans straight out to it, which is above this bit. So it's quite exciting. It's taken us a while to get to that, and I can't promise that it will stay exactly like that because, you know, different opportunities arise. Some things might not work, and we try something else. A lot of it is a sort of a bit of trial and error and listening to people like yourselves. So just to give you some pictures of some of it. So these are
kind of aspirational.
Yeah, ideas around the way things might work.
These are some of the pictures.
So those are flats in Rock House.
Yeah,
those are real. The roof garden, so those are the different ideas. So we've been talking today to the people who did some of you might have heard of the Marianne North project. Marianne North was a Victorian woman, lived in Hastings, travelled the world painting botanical flora from around the world, every continent, practically every country in the world. And she left her 800 paintings to Kew Gardens. They're in a gallery up there. But she was a Hastings person, and it would be really lovely to have a Marianne North roof garden and to refer back to some of the things that she did. So I'm going to hand over to Beth, who'll do the practical stuff.
Do you want to run that? Thank you. I've met quite a few of you, I think. I recognise a few people, but hi to anyone that I haven't met. My name's Beth, and I work for Jess, as she said. And me and John are joint project managing the redevelopment of the Observer building. So we're going to try and give you some practical information about the tenancies that are going to be coming up in the Observer building over the coming year. There are some gaps because, as Jess said, the timelines is an organic phase project. It's grant funded with a lot of different grants that, as many of you probably who run projects will know, come in at various paces. There's lots of stipulations, and it can be quite difficult to make it all stack up. We've done it at Rock House, so we know how to do it, but it just takes time. So some people who I'm already in touch with will know that we were aiming for summer to have some of the spaces open, and now the concrete repairs have been slightly delayed. So we're trying everything that we can to speed things up, but it's a tricky thing, but we're very committed to trying to get these things done as soon as possible. So the first floor, which is the floor that we're on, which is the co-working space that some people have expressed an interest in, is this floor, which will be kind of desks, and then next door, which is the kind of more studio office space working. The concrete repairs are due to finish this September, and there's another contract of work. So once the concrete repairs are done, there's another piece of construction work to be done to get the spaces ready for people to move into. So that's kind of everything else, all of the fit out, the floors, the electrics, etc. So that's going to be going on in tandem and then afterwards. And then once those works are kind of concluding, and it'll be a lot safer to come into the building once the concrete repairs are done, we'll be inviting people to view some of the spaces when they get to the stage where it's kind of what you're going to move into. And people can express an interest in a particular space, find out about the rents, and find out a bit more about the kind of the real nitty-gritty, I suppose, of what the tenants do between. And then we'll be inviting people to apply. There's a form that we ask people to fill in, and it has practical information, kind of standard stuff, and then there's some questions about the four criteria for tenants that Jess spoke about, which is need for affordable space, local connection, enthusiasm for our ethos, and making a contribution. Yeah, so what contribution would you like to make? And yeah, that's to the building and also kind of to the wider neighbourhood. Socially minded stuff, exactly. So, and that really is, we're not prescriptive about that. It's quite open answers. So we're not, if we're asking about need for affordable space, we're not going to ask for your bank statements or anything. It's much more kind of a conversation. We will then assess those applications, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. And then we're estimating that the earliest possible moving date will be sometime in October, but this is subject to possible delays due to funding challenges, which mean that the construction work can only take place at a slower pace. Fortunately, we've got a really flexible local builder who is helping us, who did Rock House. He knows how we work. He kind of understands about the flexibility. So we're not kind of restricted in that way. So, but it's important to note that we're not kind of twiddling our thumbs. we are trying to get it through as quickly as possible. Next one. So the second floor is very similar but slightly different in that we are currently searching for a floor manager for that floor. The role was put out months ago, and the terms of it have changed because of the feedback that we've had from the artists who were interested, saying that the lease originally was too short, that the rents on one part, so the rents on these extension parts of the building are slightly more expensive because of the quality of the space and the kind of finish of the room. So we've adjusted the terms of that floor manager role, and they're on the website, and I've sent them out to anyone who had already expressed an interest. But if people are interested, do get in touch, or if you think you know anyone, just ask them to email us. So it's going to be a 5-year lease. and that person or organisation, it doesn't just have to be a person, it could be a co-op, it could be a charity, it could be an organisation who takes on that management role. They will rent the whole floor, supposedly, and then collect rent from all of the kind of people who are part of the co-op or the subletting tenants who they get in and manage the studio space. So we hope that someone will come forward for that role, and once we've got them, they will invite applications from individual people who want to rent studios. So we've got a lot of people's information in a spreadsheet, and once we've got that person in their post, I'll contact all of those people and ask permission to share that information with them. So that is it. Kind of the timeline kind of is dependent on who comes forward and when they do, as to when individual people can say, yes, I want a studio and I want this big and this is what I want to do, etc. So again, the concrete presentation in September, considering the other works, the fitting out. So the floor, the second floor, will come as a finished, repaired space with some fittings and fixtures to sync the electrics, for example, but the fit out of the studios, partitioning, the kind of decorative stuff will be done by the floor manager or by the artists who come in. So it's kind of a different deal in the sense that it's not the same as what we're offering on this floor, and that is reflected in the rents. And the fitting out process could happen alongside the enabling works potentially, because it's not, the concrete repairs, it's not safe for people to come in. There's a lot of need to do around 4PP, but potentially it could work alongside our build to say our first all that kind of thing. So, and then again, the earliest estimated moving date would be October, but that's subject to change. So, we are taking expressions of interest and will be taking applications for what we're calling anchor tenants for these spaces. So anyone who can pay the rent and wants a longer lease and is ready to kind of go, and the space is ready, we think that it's feasible within the plans, we can move ahead with those tenancies. So if people who run leisure businesses, food and drink, entertainments, arts, culture, whatever, feel that they're ready to take a space now, then or soon, then definitely come forward and we can work with you to try to get that moving a bit quicker. The Leisure and Learning charity that Jess mentioned is being developed over this year alongside some consultants, and we have a group of local leaders who form an independent advisory group who scrutinise the whole project. So there's a lot of leisure experts in there, including Tina Morris, who runs Coastal Currents. So they're developing that charity at the moment with some advice, and that's going to be happening over the year. So the first kind of start-up businesses that could benefit from... Did you talk about what the charity's going to do?
Not much.
Not in that.
Help local businesses.
Yeah, so one of the things that the charity will do is provide incubation, so support for people who have an idea for a business or a venture or a pop-up or something, but don't have the resources to do it yet. So we would, and all the kind of detail of this is still being worked out, but we would provide space and we would provide some financing of the startup and take do a kind of profit share situation where that person could test their idea for a few years or a year or so, and hopefully eventually that person will become a tenant. So there'll be some things that do really well, there'll be some things that maybe won't do so well, but we hope that that will bring some local tenants in rather than trying to outsource to Hackney or whoever else. Yeah, we want local people. And yeah, so the first kind of support that might be available from that charity might be from kind of early 2020. Once we've kind of done all the fundraising and everything's established, we've got this team in place, so there's quite a long lead time for that. But in the meantime, we've had a lot of people contact us and ask us if they can hire the space in the interim period, and we really, really want to do that. There's lots of practical things to consider around building side and safety and stuff, but we want to really try and work around all that, because as Jess said, even the building as it is now, we want people to be using it and doing things in it and bringing it to life. So if you are people who want to do that, or if you know anyone who wants to do that, send us an email and we'll see what we can do. We've got a few things in the pipeline for autumn time, so we're excited.
Would that be by an hour or a day? Or?
If we can work it out for the, but possibly potentially either of those things. We've got one person, an artist, who wants to use it for a whole week, like part of the building for a whole week, and then maybe we'll do an exhibition over a weekend or something. So it can be, we'll just do it on an ad hoc basis. And
would you suppose there's something went on until like 9 o'clock? Would that be a problem? Would they be able to have a key to lock up so there's nobody able to come out? Or?
I think it would depend on the case-by-case basis, wouldn't it? Because it depends on insurance.
Yeah, we could make arrangements to have our security guard on and off.
Yeah, and we've got a little group of volunteers who we're training to become ambassadors, and one of the things that they are interested in doing is supporting events. So that might be a way that we can make that work. But yeah, I think 9 o'clock doesn't sound too bad. So cool. We go to the next question. So rents. Many of you will know some of this information already. I've been chatting to various people about rents, and I've sent emails about these particular events. Just as Jess said, all the rents are securely capped and will only rise with inflation. But if at the beginning of the tenancy we negotiate a discount because of the state of the space or for whatever reason, it's the actual rent that is capped. So we might have like a rent rise agreement, and then it's the rent as it's set that's capped, and then it rises with inflation. So the first floor, the spaces vary from between 8.4 square metres and a whopping 25 square metres, and the rents, including that and service charge, go between £2.15 a month and £4.15 a month. £2.14 and £4.15. The second floor, it's £20 a square metre and £40 a square metre service charge per annum plus that. But it's difficult to say per studio at the moment because it depends on who is the floor manager, how they divide up the space, how they set the rents. So we would work with them on that, and then we wouldn't allow someone to charge mad amounts and pocket the rest. But it will, they obviously have to make it viable for them, so we'll see what comes through. And then the leisure floors, we are taking advice. We've never done leisure before. It's a new venture for us, so we have not set rents in that for those kinds of spaces before, and this building is completely unique. So we're taking some advice on what the rents should be for those floors. But we can give more information about it soon, hopefully. The rents include water and Wi-Fi, but not electricity. But Whitewater Neighbourhood Ventures buys energy in bulk years in advance, so it works out as very cheap. It's not something that you should worry about in terms of future costs, because we already have 100 tenants next door, so it's more you buy the cheaper it is. And then rents do not include business rates, but if you're a small business, there's all kinds of different exemptions for small businesses. So most people will be exempt.
If it's your first business, you don't have to pay business rates here.
Okay.
The second business you do.
Thank you. I'm not an expert in business rates, but John is.
That's correct.
Yes, that's good. Cool. Okay, so the service charge is currently set at £40 a square metre because it has to ensure the building's sustainability in this kind of early development phase. And once that settles down, the service charge will begin to vary based on the cost of the building, just like any other service charge. But the difference is at our buildings, we set up a service charge committee that's made up of tenants, and they scrutinise the service charge and decide on how to spend it basically. So it's kind of like having a freehold company and deciding yourself. So that's part of the contribution. If you want to be part of that, then we would definitely encourage that, and we do that. We do it at Rock House, and it works really well. So how to apply? So you can. Many of you will have viewed the space before. There's no obligation to come to a viewing, but it might be valuable to come. So once the works are getting close to completion, I'll just send an email and call out to people, and we'll do some advertising to advertise some viewings. Once you've seen the space, then you kind of think you know if this is a suitable one, you can make an application using the form. We're going to do a first filter of applications by our team, so that's just us. And then we will do some, once we've kind of filtered, we'll let people know personally whether they've been successful or not, and we will also feedback if people want it. And then if you've been successful through that round, you'll be invited to a panel interview with an existing OB tenant. If you're the first round tenant, it'll be a Rock House tenant, and a White Rock Ventures director, and then a local community leader who's independent of the project. So they will be part of our independent group who scrutinise. So they know a lot about the project, but they don't work for us. Then we'll let you know if you've been successful, which I'm sure you will be, and then we'll begin working together to help you work out how you're going to move in and kind of negotiate around rents and fit out, and then the exciting bit. So that's it in terms of practical information. Lots of gaps, but hopefully some things that are helpful. So we'll take questions if anyone has any. There's Jess and then me and John who can answer.
Any questions or comments or thoughts?
Can I just ask, like the capped rent, do you then make sure that if it's a local person that gets that to rent out rent?
So local connection is one of the four criteria.
Accommodation.
Absolutely, it's the same, the identical criteria.
So you're not bringing,
No, so
12 people from outside?
No, so it's need, local connection, enthusiasm and contribution, exactly the same as for the commercial.
Right.
Yeah, so we have, in Rock House, we have a mixture of people who need affordable space because they have a creative job, or they so they maybe have a regular kind of pay and struggle to get a let from a regular agency, or people who are on local housing benefit. So one of the quotes on there before was from Sarah, who's one of our tenants, and she moved from supported accommodation into independent living from just like a local supported accommodation. So that's the kind of story that we hope will happen for the tenants.
Is there like a length time for commercial tenants, or is that negotiated along with rents?
It's negotiated, but broadly we have sort of 3-year leases, often
3 to 5.
3 to 5 year leases in Rock House on most of the spaces, but then we have a space which is what this one will be, with just the desks, and although you get your own desk, it's easy in, easy out. So if you only, you can get in there nice and easy, and then as long as you're paying rent and you want to stay, you stay. If you've gone on to a different project or whatever, then you can get out easily. So it's trying to offer both extremes. Some people want the security, other people want the flexibility.
A lot of people in the kind of desk rental in Rock House have moved into the more permanent, like long leases. So if you wanted to just try it and then think about it, and that's been kind of a pathway, I suppose, into that. There's also, and if you, so there's the kind of leases, and then there's the tenants who will be startups, I guess, who will be kind of incubated. Those leases, those kind of tenancies, I suppose, or like periods can be negotiated on a case-by-case basis, and they'll probably be shorter.
With the leisure learning aspect, those 3 floors, will you be looking for kind of a minimum number of people to kind of start together? You can't have one person coming, one feeds another, doesn't it?
It's definitely a cluster. Definitely a cluster. But there are different chunks to it. There's the ground floor going out to Cambridge Road is a large open space. Could be a food court, so lots of different small ones. But obviously, a food court doesn't work with just one guy selling sausages. So you do need to build that up. I mean, ideally, we would find, at least in some of the spaces, we would find people to manage the overall. Like Beth was saying for the second floor, somebody to manage the overall. I would hope we would find someone who wants to run a food court, and then they would find the individual traders for that. But in the alley bit, there's both a huge 5-metre high space, very big, much bigger footprint than this space and much taller. And there's also all these little caves. So the vaults, we're going to call them, rather than caves, because they are vaulted ceiling spaces. And at some point, someone's going to have to kind of give that a go. I mean, hopefully the charity will get enough interest from local people to be able to say, well, let's programme a summer, next summer, and test out a whole load of different things. And people can come and test stuff, even if they just test for a couple of weeks. And then if it's successful, they move forward with it.
So it also, thinking about, the charity's going to be thinking about incubation, but also kind of animation of the spaces in between that aren't rented. So one of the leisure experts who we've been talking to is talking about having an inclusive all year round and all day programme of events that brings into life the empty spaces, which is obviously a lot less commitment from local people. If someone wants to go, I'll do a mother toddler group or something. So that will be part of kind of bringing the spaces to life that isn't about tenants.
Any other thoughts, questions? Does it sound weird? No? Just a bit Hastings. I mean, hopefully it'll. Well, we'll see. We have enormous faith that this is the kind of approach that can work for this building, but it is going to take time to prove that. We got vacant possession of Rock House in October 2014, and by March 2018 it was breaking even, and then now it's full. So that's less than 5 years. And it's big, 9 stories. This is 3 times the size. And has a lot more fundamental, not structural problems, but a lot more tidying up to do. But I don't see any reason why we can't have this building within 3 or 4 years being full and lively, and a whole load of people in here paying rent, making their own living, and making it a really exciting place.
And you say when people actually live in Rock House, how do they feel about living in the town centre? I mean, what are their, because you then mentioned about the potential of after 5 years that you'd have the upper floors as housing, which, affordable housing, which I understand the need, but the town centre is at the moment is dog shy, and it really needs, it needs a lot of life, and if there's a lot of, it's just like, how do you marry, having people living in the town centre with trying to, regenerate a town centre, because at the moment it's all, if you look at the town centre, it's like estate agents or just broke, disused, so many disused buildings and blah blah blah, it's dead, it's a dead zone. And town centres are meant to be where it's cultural, it's lively, there's life, there's stuff going on, there's event spaces, and I just struggle with seeing how you could, have people, I don't know, what people's thoughts have been in Rock House. I've heard that there's been noise.
Because it is noisy. It is noisy. Obviously, anyone who's been to the Printworks on a Friday night will know that it's noisy, and it's noisy till quite late. The fact is, we really respect that business as much as all the businesses in the neighbourhood, because exactly as you're saying, a town centre should be lively. It should be a place where you can go out late and enjoy yourself and spend money that goes back into the town. So what do people in Rock House feel? It has been a bit noisy for some of them some of the time. Broadly, I think people move into town centre housing because they can. They mostly haven't got young children, although saying that, 2 of our tenants, one of them has a baby and one has 2 small children. But maybe small children sleep easier as well. I'm not sure if I'd want to bring like a 12-year-old up who's trying to do homework and stuff. I don't know. But basically people move on. You expect that town centre is not somewhere, ideally, where someone will spend their whole life. They will move on, but it's a great place to be for a while. And it's an exciting place to live. So we're really clear with our tenants that this is a town centre. It's not going to be quiet, and you are not going to try and close down leisure businesses that are important to the town centre. We make sure that tenants, if they've got a problem, they come through us to complain about it, and we try and negotiate with neighbours if we think they've been really out of order, but otherwise, if they're just running their business, they're just running their business.
I think that because the tenants are really integrated into the kind of whole building of Rockhouse, so obviously there is a vast difference between the workspace tenants and the residential tenants, but there's lots of common space as well. So like the lobby area is where we eat our lunch, and sometimes we have meetings, but the residential tenants sit and have a coffee during the day as well. So I think partly people would move into Rockhouse because they want to be part of this community, and it's people who John was saying that they stay for as long as they need the space. So I think for someone like who's moving in out of a difficult period of their life, which people who do tend to be when they come in, they benefit a lot from having that liveliness and that kind of energy of creativity and collaboration and openness. And so I think it's a really good place for people who are kind of growing. And yeah, I love having the residential tenants around, especially to kids. So yeah, I think they form a really important part of the building, and I think that they'll form a really important part of this one as well, and will benefit a lot from it.
Okay, large studio space ends up ultimately being a huge open space, even if you divide it up. And that, as usual, requires a heating issue. Are you going to improve the insulation? Because what happens in winter, a lot of artists, is they have to end up going and working at home because the space becomes so cold. And that's kind of an issue.
Therefore, yeah, I imagine it's a huge issue.
I mean, you know, how one person can't come in and just put a radiator on. Actually, it's heating the whole area. Is there any plans to improve the insulation?
There's definitely plans to do that, because once we put heat in, it'll just go straight out there. So for the moment, we have to do this bit at a time. For the moment, we're moving towards this stuff mostly, so polycarbonate, which is actually it's better insulation than glass, except obviously double glazing would be different, but than a single pane of glass. So moving to that first, and eventually there'll be radiators under the windows, which is the best place to make sure that the whole space is warm. We can't put heating in this winter, because we can't put heating in until we've done more on the insulation. Because as soon as we do that, the heat loss is so high that it would actually be illegal to let it. So we've got this kind of catch-22. We have to sort the insulation before we can put the heating in, which means we can't put the heating in straight away. So it will be cold. For the first year, it will be cold in winter. I will say that the really good thing about the connection with Rockhouse is that tenants here will have the opportunity to use Rockhouse too, to be part of that community too. And we're just about to open a lovely warm canteen on the bottom floor of Rockhouse. So in terms of going for a warm break, that will be available over the winter, but it will be chilly. Yeah. So it's blankets and fleeces and earmuffs. But it will also be the time we've spent in here and the organisation workshop, people that have been here for the last month, it warms up really quickly as long as you've got people in it. As long as you've got people breathing and preferably working, sawing things and stuff. And then the following year it will be heated. We cope with radiators, but the ideal would be to heat it with air source heat pumps because they are much more environmentally friendly than gas, but they're also much more expensive and difficult to put in quickly. So the idea is to start with a limited gas supply in order to create some warm parts of the building, and then move eventually to an air source heat pump system which would at least heat the residential and probably the second floor. So it's kind of, you can see it's not an easy thing to do with no money, but also to kind of try to rush to some extent to get good things to happen.
But it's something, an artist in particular needs to take into consideration. That kind of just get through the really coldest part of the winter.
Yeah. Temporarily, though, it's not a long term.
I have to say, I think generally the plans are very, very practical and achievable and extremely well thought through and managed. I don't see anything weird about it. Fantastic. It's great. Yeah.
But certainly a different approach to the 13 owners before us.
Much,
Yeah. So,
can you expand slightly on your ethos and what willingness to contribute? What does that encompass?
Cap rents and keeping affordable space, about intentional neighbouring and collaborating and creating a community that on kind of being nice to each other is the norm, and people participating in shaping the place. So I don't think of anything else.
the reason we do capped rents isn't just to benefit the individual tenants, it's to maintain diversity in the neighbourhood. So it's to make sure that the neighbourhood doesn't become kind of sterilised and only available to a very exclusive group of people in 10, 20, 30 years' time. So it's still a diverse and vibrant and exciting space. So that's the capped rent bit. Yeah. So the ethos is growing and changing all the time, but it's basically I'd say a communitarian ethos. It's about saying that there's something special about people coming together, looking out for each other and looking out for their place. And that could be...
I was just thinking of involving the community or young people, bringing them and doing classes and things.
Absolutely.
Would that be part of that?
Definitely. So it's about outreach. Yeah, it's about not creating a fortress and everyone behind their doors, but about really bringing people in and people from here collaborating with each other and with other projects outside. So making it a Hastings thing, space for the town.
Many of our tenants do that sort of thing as part of their work anyway, so they're kind of, I suppose, part of the selection. People, like one of our tenants, for example, she organised a programme called Hastings Creative Summer, which brought young people, sort of, I think they were like 14 to 19, into our building and then other buildings in the area to have creative experiences of creative industries basically throughout the summer. So that's something that she was going to do anyway, but we supported her by giving space and allowing that to happen through through promoting it. And so that kind of thing, she's improving the neighbourhood and giving back to the town through, and that's absolutely what our interest is to contribute. And then the contribution, it could be something like that. It could be about outreach, so further afield than Rockhouse, or it could be about making cups of tea for people, or it could be about being on the service charge committee, organising a Christmas party. We've got a few photographers in the building. One of them took photos of the Christmas party and then offered to print them on kind of nice, I don't even know what it's called, print them nicely and put them up all up the stairwell of Rockhouse. So people offer kind of workshops and that kind of thing. So it can be as creative or as pragmatic as you like.
I'm presumably facilitating networking events.
Yeah. We have a lot of kind of events from networking up to kind of like film club and breakfast stuff and so we do all those things. There's no obligation to take part in any of that. For people, it sounds like it's some kind of really commercial co-working space if you're like, let's network, but the networking kind of just happens anyway, and everyone knows each other. But now we're really lucky that we've got this kitchen, canteen now that we can gather in, and so that's just another place where people can get to know each other. And there's a lot of collaborations that happen through that informal working.
It is leisure and learning, isn't it? So the learning aspect is what teaching skills, people passing on skills. Is
Yeah.
that part of the learning in young people?
That would, so the idea is the charity, I think Beth said it will animate the space. Some of that animation will be kind of learning offers of various kinds. There's this brilliant thing in Melbourne and Sydney and Auckland stuff, in Australia and New Zealand, called laneway learning. And they just have endless different kinds of things. You could go along for an hour and learn anything, basically, from, I don't know, how to make a kite to how to write a will. Loads of different things.
Yeah.
And so, there's always something that you might want to do on that, and that's the idea, to try and really grow that, but also to try and grow slightly more formal learning, like apprenticeships. That's the other thing. To say about the old workers here.
Oh yeah, we met up with some of the FJ Parsons team, so the people who were working here from the 60s to the 80s, and they all still are friends. They've got a huge group of them who have a Christmas party every year. We've met with about 9 of them earlier this week and had a cup of tea, and they were talking about what the building was like when they were here, and saying that it was this kind of amazing community of family. They kept saying the word family, basically, and how thriving it was, and everyone looked after each other. People ended up getting married, and it sounded just lovely, and that, like, this whole neighbourhood was just absolutely animated and busy, and they always go to the same cafe for lunch every day, and they were all sneaking around driving off and stuff. And they were brilliant. But it just was such a nice image of the build, because you come in here, sometimes we have to come in on our own do stuff, and it just feels, you really, really, it just got me really excited about it being filled with people again, doing interesting.
But you were saying they had, a lot of people became apprentices in those days and stayed for the rest of their lives till they retired.
Yeah.
And so that idea of some more formal apprenticeships, training, work with the college, that kind of thing. So everything from the laneway learning through to the much more formal qualifications and apprenticeships.
Yeah. So our building contractor, Christophe, is very into creating opportunities for local people through giving them jobs, training. We have to replace all the windows in the buildings, like 129 windows, I think. So he wants to set up a workshop where those will be restored one by one and taken out, restored, and that will be a training opportunity for people, young people or people from the town, to come and learn how to do that. So there's lots of, obviously doing a building up like this is just such a big undertaking, so there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to participate in that. We've already had 40 people come in and do that already, so we want to do a lot more of that.
Thank you very much for coming. Does anybody want to see, can we have a poke our nose in the first floor?
Yes.
Yeah? Anyone who hasn't seen that floor at least, would you want to have a look?
Brilliant, thank you so much.